think we'll start with a very quick intro. What you guys are working on. Probably a quick brief on the product would be really good, and then how what role you guys are playing. That'll be great. We can start with Touch.
Yeah,
I think it's on.
Yeah, I'm Harshan, director of BD at Thesis, and we're a Bitcoin venture studio, and right now very focused on Mezzo, which is going to be our economic layer on Bitcoin, so bringing EVM to BTC and building out Bitcoin Fi.
Hey everyone, Brendan, one of the initial contributors at Core. I'm currently doing a lot of institutional BD and Core Ventures, where we back builders. And yeah, Core is a layer 1 EVM compatible blockchain that's secured by Bitcoin, specifically Bitcoin miners who delegate hash rate. Over 55% is helping secure Core today. And then there's also a Bitcoin staking function where Bitcoin holders can participate, lock their Bitcoin on the Bitcoin L1, and help secure the network. So yeah, excited to be here. Should be a pretty fun chat.
And hi, I'm Dylan Kowalik, and I'm leading developer relations for Goat Network. Goat Network is a Bitcoin layer 2 that is locking Bitcoin, of course, on the L1. We take advantage of using BitVM2 and Mast and Taproot, very similar to other protocols, but we go a step further and we decentralize our sequencer and we allocate fees and to delegates who lock their tokens on the L2, which is an Ethereum virtual machine. So we have the flexibility of a rollup while we have the ability to lock and generate yield on the L2 for those who delegate Bitcoin. So thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Norbert, Global Growth at Nubit. We believe in a future boundaries between Web2 and Web3 should disappear. So we're bridging that gap by offering a one-stop ecosystem solution that consists of our core product, the Nubit DA. In addition to that one, we have Universal Bridge, mini chains, and a couple other services, just trying to onboard the next billion users using Bitcoin as well.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm the founder of Money Chain. We are EVM sidechain or layer 2, whatever, for Bitcoin. And our users are most like degens who are doing, inscriptions, ordinals, BRC20, ruins. And we build, all kinds of infras and dApps for those users can trade with liquidity. And right now, we are still having like 2.5 billion assets under, AUM. We're working with Nubit, we're working with Core, we're working with Babylon, Soft, Lorenzo, like Bedrock, all kinds of liquidity. So basically what we're doing is, one is for retail users, for degen users to trade their memes, to launch new memes, NFTs. Another thing is to build BTC Fi with liquidity, crossing from Merlin to other chains. Right now we are connected to 20 plus EVM chains, including Core, Squirrel, Nina, Arbitrum, BNB chain, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. I really like the panel because it's a mix of the technical and as well as growth, the community, product. So it's a very solid panel, like to really learn more about Bitcoin ecosystem, right? I think first I'll start with a very important question, right? So last year same time there was not much on Bitcoin scaling, right? Of course there are OGs in the Bitcoin space, like starting with Lightning Network, which kind of scaled the whole P2P payment thing. And there was, of course, a lot of innovation, like Stacks came up and did a lot of stuff, right? But today there is group of people who are like really believing like Bitcoin scaling. I think it's still a small community. That's how I see it. Like we are all part of the same community, right? So, but there are still like a lot of naysayers, right? So I mean, when we are like pitching and talking to people and when we talk to others, it's clearly evident that a lot of people don't believe you can actually like scale Bitcoin, right? So I would love to like know what's your thoughts on like how do we even say to them, or like how do we talk to them, or like what are the things that we should be actually like positioning ourselves as a Bitcoin scaling projects in terms of creating that awareness that hey, what, like Bitcoin scaling is possible, right? So Jeff, you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. To me, honestly, I always say that I think the Bitcoin scaling, the reason we're having all these projects today, to me, I think it's because of ordinals. is because of retail users. We had Stacks, we had Nine Network, we have wrapped Bitcoin from BitGo, $8 billion, $9 billion value Bitcoin, but nobody's talking about BTC5. Nobody's talking about BTC scaling. Like before we launched Merlin, like very few people in the world they think Bitcoin layer 2 exists. So I think when you look at Ethereum, why Ethereum had all these layer 2s is because Ethereum had ICO in 2017. So all kinds of scams, memes, all kinds of projects come there, issue tokens, and then they have the DeFi summer with all kinds of protocols with interoperability with all these assets together, with Aave, with Compound, and then with NFT, with DeFi, with GameFi, with SocialFi. So we need to have a strong retail user base in order to have the need of scaling solution. So I think technically you can bring lots of examples like Taproot, Upgrade, like Opcat, BitVM, but I think the market sees ordinals, NFTs, BRC20, ruins, see the potential of the user market, and people are trying to launch new assets, content on Bitcoin layer 1. Thus, then we need all these Bitcoin layer 2s. And also, like, we can talk more about BTC5 like later. But the thing is, like, people are always trying to ask us, like, what's the real yield for this, BTC5? And you cannot say just, it's airdrops, these tokens might get on Binance so you can have the yield. That's not the real yield. The real yield comes from trading. The real yield comes from the people, lend stuff, borrow stuff, trade stuff, launch stuff. So I think our main focus will still be on the retail side, to have users to come board to trade here. So that's why we have billions of trading volumes for spot and also for perps on Merlin. So yeah, to me, my dream is still stuck with ordinals and the runes.
Yeah, of course, I think we saw like a good product market fit through ordinals, right? It's good spike in even the Bitcoin transaction and things like that, right? So especially with Bitcoin L2, there is already a preconceived notion on what Bitcoin L or like an L2 is, right? Like what is being said by Ethereum as a precedent, right? So what's your thought on that specific thing, Jeff? Because people think, oh, L2, oh, these are the things, if they don't qualify it, it's not a Bitcoin L2.
You mean like what kinds of chains qualify for like the narrative, Bitcoin layer 2?
Or in general, like if it is a L2, it kind of has to settle on the L1 and has to be verified, and there's a bridge part comes in, etc. With that precedent, what Ethereum has already set, right?
Yeah.
So people try to put that lens and see the Bitcoin ecosystem. Right?
I think layer 2, the term is made up, by Ethereum people. 5 years ago, people don't really know what is layer 2. So I'm the guy, who is not confused or very, very into this concept. But what I see is Bitcoin layer 1 is slow, it's expensive, doesn't have a smart contract. So users want, I'm for Web 2, so I look at users' need. They want to trade the stuff with liquidity, right? With cheaper gas fee, with faster transaction time. So they need a place to do that. So on day one, we're not very, confused with the idea layer 2 or sidechain, we really don't care. But the thing is, we want a place with faster transaction, better liquidity for users to trade. And in order to do that, we do this in a MVP market fit kind of way. People call us centralized. That's okay. We have lots of assets there. They're safe. So I think in order to do that, we need to do that step by step. But right now, we're working with the Bitcoin OS. We're trying to our own way to do BVM. But the thing is, we are looking at what users want. So I know the Bitcoin maxis, they hate ordinals, they hate BRC20. I don't care. As long as the users are using that, we are providing service for them. I think to us, that is all.
Norbert, you want to talk about the first point? What's your thoughts? What's the initial question? So it's on.
Two different
you want to go?
We could probably pop in. On the layer 2 thing. I think it's just differing definitions, right? It's just could be a marketing term. There'll be some sort of consensus soon on what to call these things, but there's a lot of different approaches to try and scale Bitcoin. Most are layer 1 sidechains, truthfully. Whether they use the term L2, it's whatever. It's just I think people anchor it a lot with what's being done in ETH. They're not the same. Technology may enable that in the future, and I think we're all probably getting ready for that. But at this point, we're generally using some an EVM compatible chain that is secured somehow by Bitcoin, right? And there's multiple approaches that you've seen trying to do that. I think the goal at the end of the day is to scale what you can do with your Bitcoin, and then eventually, Bitcoin's quite slow. It's going to have to survive on fees alone at some point, right? Miners subsidies are making it tough every halving. it's going to become quite expensive. If it's going to subsist on fees, those fees will be quite expensive too. So the thinking is it'll be some sort of expensive settlement layer, and a lot of other activities will happen on these scaling chains, right? Or layers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, touching on your earlier point of why Bitcoin now, I think there's two reasons. One, what Joe mentioned Jeff, on the ordinal side, it created so much money that all the miners focused. I think sometimes you need something to click for people to change their psychology or perception of how things work. And we've seen that across history with the internet. We've seen it with cars and horses. It happened multiple times. And sometimes you just have to have the right moment and right time where someone realizes, wait, why aren't we doing this? I think the second thing is that institutionally, we have ETFs. We have a ton of demand, and socially, Bitcoin's now socially accepted across most countries across the globe. It's not something that someone's fighting against. And then going to Brendan's point, we've had this idea that Bitcoin just needs to sit there, but it's a $1.2 trillion asset that's very inefficient from a capital perspective if you don't do anything with it. And so I think when we think of layer twos, it doesn't necessarily need to be like a roll-up like what we've seen on ETH, but how do we use Bitcoin? We know Bitcoin itself is secure. The point of Bitcoin was like, this is a secure chain that no one can mint more of. You can't copy, you can't delete, and it can't just disappear. It's all on chain. How do you take that and build an economy around it? I think that's what a lot of us are trying to do while we figure out, can we do roll-ups or settlement on Bitcoin in the future? But right now, it's like, how do we take this thing that's been, the quiet kid in the back of the room that's like, hey, do you want to come play with us? And how do we build it in a trustless, safeless, like in a safe manner without a multi-sig or, a centralized custodian like BlockFi or Celsius?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my pretty much like overall overview is that there are always going to be people who doubt when it comes down to innovation and scalability, even if it's blockchain or outside of it. So I feel like we shouldn't look at scalability as a threat for Bitcoin itself or anything really. We should look at it as an opportunity, because going from actual store of value to becoming much more of a daily actual use case of finance, let it be with applications or like it runs in a backend. I feel like pretty much like what Bitcoin unlocks or what Babylon itself does has how we can convince those people to move that idle Bitcoin and actually keep it in the system. Because I feel like that's the biggest issue where we kind of facing of how we can convince those people to do something with it. Because Bitcoin is going more from a store of value to some functional asset that we feel like still trying to figure out which way or how we can utilize the best. But I feel like some of the maxis, some of the people like, this is not the right direction, where there's not really a threat if you're just trying to making sure the core of Bitcoin, of decentralization, stays the same. If you're able to maintain that, anything we are able to add shouldn't sacrifice the work that we're doing.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you have to be in the operative mindset, right? Yeah, Dylan, please.
I just want to quickly, before we go on to that next thing, is that now I can see that there is a clear divide. And I think at the end of the day, when we all put on our dev hats and when we're actually going to go to work on some of this stuff, that we're improving that L2 is a way so that we can scale Bitcoin, not that we take Bitcoin away from what it's already doing. It's enabling our digital economy, and we're going to enable others by enabling developers with these sorts of kits so that we can give them tools so that we can actually enable money systems, not just currency systems. So we know that Bitcoin has really revolutionized the way that we basically create money and think of what money can be for the world. And when we add DeFi on top of that, I think Ethereum is a brilliant opportunity for most of us to realize what we can actually see in how DeFi can change the world. And we look at DeFi Summer as a way of like optimistically looking at the direction of what Ethereum did do for the ecosystem. I think that is coming actually for what we're doing now in YieldFi. I think Bitcoin actually has this unique opportunity to unlock this new summer idea. And I'm excited to see everyone contribute into the same ecosystem. We're all having different ideas on the approach of L2, and maybe some is going to stick closer to the L1, right? And there's different primitives for this. And then some are going to be scaling it with different operations, and we're doing this, of course. And so some are a little bit more savvy, right? We're going with a little bit more of the zero knowledge approach. And so we know this works with Optimism. We know this works with Arbitrum. And so there's no stopping the improvements that Dane Kuhn already allowed L2 Ethereum to kind of move into this like hyper scalable direction that Ethereum is now moving into. We can't ignore the innovations that are happening in other ecosystems. We can bring that adoption here to Bitcoin and see what we can kind of like carry out and do.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think Bitcoin has more social acceptance, right? I mean, people like our understand Bitcoin. Even like if you just see outside this whole like bubble of we are in, or like crypto or Web3 ecosystem, people still recognize Bitcoin, right? Like versus other cryptocurrencies or like the technologies that are out there. I mean, that absolutely makes sense, right? So Bitcoin makes sense. It's an opportunity, like that we have to. I mean, just a thought. I mean, do you feel like the other ecosystem? I mean, outside Bitcoin ecosystem, so Ethereum ecosystems, do you feel like they're too sensitive to these nomenclatures and how you see things, like from a technology perspective? Like, do you feel the same?
I feel safe with Ethereum. Yeah. I think, I mean, my Ethereum bags are fine, right? But, I mean, most of the people here at the conference already are pretty bullish on Ethereum. I mean, but in general, Ethereum is just crypto, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just code. Right. So whether you're trying to code it in a central or decentralized fashion, I think really comes down to governance. And if you're going to be decentralizing your sets of authorities, so similar to if the BitVM2 paper introduces this idea of a permissionless bridge, it's up to technologists and innovators to say, how do we actually make this more trustless? How do we improve not just the scalability and this like idea of a permissionless bridge, but then actually how do we enable multiple authorities such as our sequencers to kind of take this to a whole different direction and maybe even enable this new kind of fee mechanism that we saw from L1 staking. And I think POS is great for incentivization techniques that we see in Cosmos, and that's why we take these stacks, and so that we can have these very clear and secure and battle-tested sort of consensus models that Tendermint even introduced. So I really encourage most developers to kind of pick and choose and cherry pick some of their favorite stacks. If you're a multi-chain maximalist, I think the Bitcoin development scene is awesome. So yeah.
I think multiple chains are going to have a lot of value. And I think at the end of the day, we're just building tools. The point isn't like my chain is better than your chain or what chain is better. Like it's what do the end customers care about? I don't think anyone in the room really cares about what fiber optic network they use or if it's IPv4 or IPv6. Like this is all supposed to be abstracted away. It is about why are we trying to do stuff and what is the end use case or reasons why we're doing some of these things. The biggest use case beyond our little bubble is stablecoins right now. They are I think someone was quoting a couple days ago that Tether made more money than BlackRock. And so if you think about that, it's like there is like a clear purpose for why we're doing things. Like my first token in crypto in 2015 was Stellar, because I thought that intra-country payment systems that settle in seconds was an important thing. So I think whatever helps us achieve something that makes someone's life easier, cheaper, or more efficient is going to be the reason. And then the underlying tech, we'll have decentralization and all these things that matter, and we'll slowly get there. But I think we need to start thinking about what the end customer is thinking about, rather than like Arbitrum or Cosmos or who's doing what, and is it BitVM1 or is it BitVM2? We could probably go out and talk to 100 people. Maybe one person would have any idea of what we're talking about.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like wherever the consumers, wherever the people are, there's many different use cases, let that be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, even Ton ecosystem now with the Telegram games. There's definitely different use cases. You just have to find either it's because of security, either because of scalability. There's different reasons why people would use that chain. Like you shouldn't just focus on one and just purely be there. I feel like being that interoperable somewhere in between the two where you have a use case for it, but also I feel like currently what Bitcoin is missing itself is the users. So I feel like whatever that might be, like going back to the initial question, not against Ethereum at all, that's where I definitely see more functionality to it, but I feel like as more devs actually coming into a Bitcoin ecosystem, they're able to re-enhance and able to apply more of what they did in previous chains.
And just one thing to add to Norbert's point, like if you think about like a website or a product, Web 2, Web 3, I think the terminology is pretty stupid, just my personal opinion. I think we're just evolving tech. But when you build a website or a product, think about all the different tools that go into something, right? You have AWS doing this, you have, Snowflake holding some data. Like it's an amalgamation of very different tools coming together to building something. And so I see some of that probably happening at some point. I think some of this tribalism over the next couple of years is probably going to fade away as it just becomes purely about tech and code and what things enable what. And some things are going to be better for one thing and some things are going to be better than the other thing. Same way that Solana transactions per second are a lot faster than Bitcoin's transactions per second, right? So.
Yeah, I think the beauty about Bitcoin is like we don't need to invite Vitalik to come here to sing karaoke, for everyone, right? Like we don't even know who Satoshi is.
We needed that, okay?
Yeah. Oh,
We
that
all
would be
needed to
better.
see
That would be
that.
even better. Yeah.
I feel like that'd be very bullish.
If he comes here, yeah, of course. But yeah, so like we can build whatever we want. People have different ideas. We have RGB, Nining, we have CKB, Fractal, we have EVM, we have Stacks, Rootstock. We have so many solutions. So as long as we are all building for our community and get the users, get attractions, I think that would be better off for like everyone in the community. That's why right now we're working with so many Bitcoin projects, trying to get the volume together, trying to get the users together, and also I think it's perfect place for little guys. Like last year we were nobody. We were like guys, nerds in home building for ordinals and inscriptions, and like BVM, like the guy who published BVM, like nobody knows him before, I guess, like even before the white paper. And when people read this white paper, when people use our product, they can, okay, this is good. This is something like I would like to see more in the future, and they come around us, they support us, and then we grow, from grassroots, to many people, we don't know before. They think Merlin is like a crazy giant, just gets all this money from people, whatever. But we're actually little guys. We're little guys building inscriptions. So last year in June, we are taking our own pocket money to pay the builders, to pay the developers to do this. So I think Bitcoin is a perfect place for anyone who has a dream, who has cool ideas, trying to do something different and unique, and eventually bring the things to the world, the builders, to the partners, to the users, whatever. But yeah, I think Bitcoin is much, much better than any other ecosystems. We don't have a Bitcoin foundation, right? We have Solana Foundation, we have ETH Foundation, we have Town Foundation, but we don't have Bitcoin Foundation.
We are the face of Bitcoin, right? So we're all Satoshi. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. That's pretty well put, right? I think every ecosystem has a face.
I think you said something very powerful there, where there's no foundation with Bitcoin, right? Like you have a couple backers, but it's literally people that are generally naturally excited about things and doing stuff without the, call it comfort of a grant or whatever to build. And frankly speaking, Bitcoin funding prior to this year is pretty low across venture. They didn't believe Bitcoin projects made money, and what's the point? Lightning, RGB, all these things are like, we've been investing this for 8 years, 10 years, whatever. And so I think it's really interesting if you think about the mindset of someone that chooses to do something here.
Yeah, that's what makes it special. Was this fair launch, right? And it does have the most users, most liquidity, and when I say users, holders. So yeah, it just has a ton of potential. And in terms of the ETH question, I think a lot of us here are just blending the best ideas, right? Bitcoin's the most decentralized secure assets, the most widely adopted, has the most liquidity that's stuck, and it's secured by proof of work with these miners who we don't talk enough about. But most of us, we're an EVM chain, right? We've taken some of the best aspects of the composability of EVM. It's the most widely adopted builder toolkit right now. Will it stay there? Not sure. You may have some opinions on that, but right now it makes sense for folks to build on that. So we're kind of trying to blend the best ideas to at least that's been Core's approach, right? And I think some others here. So I don't think there's any animosity. We're kind of picking the best ideas from a lot of different categories.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was like thinking just out loud in my head. I was like, I've been asking people randomly, how is it that you kind of construct everything? And most of the conversations that I have with other architects that are in the Bitcoin space, what the conversation usually turns into is like, oh, me too. Oh, I'm doing that too. Oh, me too. I was like, oh, well, are we competitors? Like, I don't really get it. Like, it's like, what are we doing? And it's like, I usually see that L2s are actually just a strategy in terms of what kind of direction of realistically what the network as a business is doing and the kind of fundraising and projects that we're bringing into the ecosystem. And the Bitcoin layer 2 is sort of optimized to scale those protocols and those partnerships. And when you really focus on your developer community, that really is the thing that scales. I think every L1, for example, back in the Ethereum Cambrian explosion, when we saw rollups happen, that was really the reason why everything kind of blew up. Blast is a great example of an L2 actually realistically embracing development on the L2 and then kind of iterating from there. Even though it was in a centralized fashion, they're still planned on going into a decentralized approach. And then we see stacks where people kind of get discouraged of, well, is it really valuable to be using Polkadot? It's like, yeah, well, just because the whole meme of Polkadot is that dot is dead. Well, it's like most people actually suggest that you use their substrate for a sequencer, and it's like, that's a brilliant idea. It's just tech. I think we forget that the technology is sort of all surmounting to this like one entangled scheme, and so there's several projects that take on this idea of super chain or entangled rollup, like what we do, and so on, and universal rollup. But the cryptography that's behind all of this, at the end of the day, I really think that the competition is the policy between my ERC20 standard versus your whatever standard that you're using. And we heard DLC kind of coming into the root with, realistically, you're never going to get funding unless Franklin Templeton believes in your signature scheme, which is interesting, because I'm like, crypto is crypto, and if f of x equals y, math is math. And so there's a reason why ZKP sticks around, and there's a reason why we're using BitVM2, because it's very good for basically verifying Turing complete code. So Bitcoin as a computer works. I think just the more experimentation that we take with other stacks, like we're like pulling from SDKs such as Cosmos to kind of play around with a lot of this, we end up finding that, holy crap, like we can actually build L2s on this thing, and it could actually decentralize itself over time. You could just see the future as soon as you start seeing the buttons and the red blues happening on the screen. It all starts to make sense. Yeah.
So I'll get to this point. Now we are all like, probably using Bitcoin as a DA layer. And there's also like a lot of this discussion going around, like, are we going to like bloat the state of the Bitcoin? Like, because so many projects like trying to like solve it. And, we will be like, in a way, some or other way, going to like settle on Bitcoin, like through inscription or whatever, right? So do you guys feel the same? Like, what's your thoughts on it? Ash, you want to?
What's the exactly like?
I'm saying like, there's so many projects, like scaling projects that are building, and all going to like compete for the Bitcoin DA.
So I don't think anyone's actually doing DA on Bitcoin today, and so not worried about it yet until someone can do it in a scalable manner. At some point, we'll all be bidding for Bitcoin block space. Maybe we go down the route of Ethereum where we get blobs and whatever is going on over there, and so. But I don't think we're there yet. So.
So I think it's a good problem to have when.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good. Well, we need to. Brendan mentioned this earlier. We're going to have to offset block fees with fee revenue. And so at some point, you're going to have that. And I think the best way to do it is you need to hit a inflection point of adoption such that there's enough users using the network where the fees are abstracted out, but bundled together, they're large enough to compete for auctions that will happen at the DA level for Bitcoin's block space. That's what I imagine happening, unless something systemically changes with Bitcoin itself. And so, but you have to get that. So it's going to be like a cold start problem of like the chicken or the egg of how do you scale such that the fees aren't too high for individuals, but they're big enough such that you're able to get into that block space if and when we get there. And it's going to generally be a good thing as, say that 10 years, 20 years from now, as the fees keep going down, you're going to have that stuff offset. And the one reason why miners were so bullish on ordinals, where you had this thing go from literally zero to like 500 million in miner revenue in 2023, where that is just pure surplus on the margin they're already having. And so if the revenue starts going down, the incentives go away a little bit. So it's like it's all math.
You want to add something?
Honestly, I don't have a lot to add. I'm very aligned with Harsh's thoughts. That's definitely how we see it. And there'll probably be different technologies to find that right middle ground of between cost and what can actually be rolled and bundled to be settled on Bitcoin. So we're working on a couple other problems, but I think folks are very focused on that, and it'll be widely adopted by, I think, a variety of these side chains or scaling layers. And we're just kind of setting up to be ready for that. But I see a world exactly what that as Harsh described, and I think it's important to, like, we talk a lot about Bitcoin Fi and utility for Bitcoin, which is super important. And Bitcoin holders are a big piece of the Bitcoin network, but the miners are the folks doing the hard work that actually decentralize, secure it, and put in the work, and they need to be incentivized to keep the network rolling and be decentralized. So whether it's like other subsidies from chains like core or merge mining chains, or finding ways to provide more fees, that's really important for this ecosystem. So yeah.
Dylan, what's your dev perspective there? I mean, considering that you work with a lot of developers.
I guess in general, I think most developers that we're thinking about are not actually coders, but they're actually like the experts in, for example, like finance. I think the thing that we're not seeing enough of is really kind of like an external perspective on how do we actually enable financial protocol, not just smart contractual protocol. So we took a stab at this idea of saying, maybe the missing link in BTC L2 is actually just basically shedding some light on what a financial sustainable protocol really looks like, and realistically what would have to be the transaction volumes per month in order to kind of have this idea of a sustainable yield, because we say it, but how do we actually actualize it? And so if you see where I'm going with this, it's realistically just people who come together and actually do the research, and then they come up with a mock review and they say, hey, I think this protocol will succeed if we hit these sorts of metrics. And so I think that'll give a lot more confidence to realistically just the entire application market of Bitcoin, and then people will start to actually, I would say, be drawn towards Bitcoin applications, and then that's when we're going to see that Bitcoin Cambrian explosion, which I feel like is coming very soon. So.
No, but like you guys are building a dataability layer.
Yeah, so I feel like my point is, looking at earlier this year with all the ordinals and runes actions, like that definitely showed that Bitcoin has its limitation from its nature. So it definitely needs one way or another that helps either with the throughput or also like offsets the cost of the actual transactions. So I feel like that only happens now in cyclical waves until something happens like Babylon a couple weeks ago, that also created a massive congestion in the network itself. So DA solution itself is what we're looking at, but in addition to that one, going to Dylan's point itself, where some devs, some amazing Web2 devs are just scared to enter the blockchain space. Like, it's really daunting. There's many ways that could go wrong. You have to learn how to code. You have to learn how to write a smart contract. Even a minimal mistake, sadly, you're gonna get liquidated. You're gonna get hacked into. So it's a really, really easy way for us to also offer a SDK where we're actually able to onboard more developers into a blockchain space. So both from dev aspect, but also from the infra aspect, we're able to hopefully help the blockchain or Bitcoin space.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think I really think it's not there yet. To be honest, there are several different approaches right now. We spend most of the resources into the BVM thing, but some people they are looking for the opcat, because if opcat is going live on layer 1, it's gonna be much easier than BVM. But personally, as a Bitcoin holder, I'm not really bullish on opcat, because I don't want anything to be changed on Bitcoin layer 1. I would rather lost my chain instead of losing my Bitcoin, right? I mean that's like honest thing to say. Like, I don't want anything happen to Bitcoin. And also Babylon, they offer like a different solution as well. So I think right now it's just like it's not there yet. I don't think any chain will share the same security of Bitcoin in the next 12 months. To be honest, to be like practical, we have different alpha versions, with BVM, and we calculate the cost. The cost is huge. We had like $25 million income in Q1 as our network revenue, but for us it's still like a lot of cost to actually adopt that in our testing version. So I think it's not there yet, but definitely I can see this coming in a very near future.
Never say never.
Yeah, I think we love speculating, right, as an ecosystem. Yeah. So there's also like this thing, right? So on Bitcoin scaling, so there's like two things we are trying to solve. Like, one, to unlock the BDC, like the dominant BDC, and the other is to like how can we bring more utility and programmability on Bitcoin? So you guys are like working with a lot of projects out there, right? So be it DeFi or anything. So what is the kind of trend that you're seeing? Like, what are the kind of projects that are coming on board, or developers that are interested, like come and build on you guys? You want to go?
Yeah, we're not live yet. So, but I can talk about we're building on top of TBDC, and so I think the big thing for us just generally is that we're seeing a lot more demand for Bitcoin and Bitcoin liquidity. So you had a DeFi cycle that was primarily ETH and stablecoin focused, and I think that 2024 is starting to show that 2025 and beyond is going to be big on Bitcoin and Bitcoin Fi. And you're seeing that with demand, from Starkware, you're seeing it on ETH, you're seeing it on Arbitrum. Most of the other active chains today are looking for Bitcoin liquidity to do Bitcoin, based lending, CDPs, perps markets, et cetera. And so, we're seeing, a good strong demand, and GMX and Synthetics. Eigenlayer just added their first Bitcoin staking asset 2 days ago. So I think I think right now it's just purely focused on finance. I think ordinals have already shown that there's demand on that end, and I think we're just looking for like scalable options and who's building on that. But I think for us, it just generally like how do we put Bitcoin in this ecosystem and get more than like 50 bips of interest rate? Because if you think about a lot of people that don't touch Bitcoin, less than, and I've said this before, like less than 1% or I think 1.5% of Bitcoin's on chain on an EV, like a programmable chain where you can do stuff with it. And most people are like, well, I'm not going to risk moving my assets on chain for 50 bips. And so I think that's where I think we're going to see a lot of demand. At least once you get them to participate, then you can start building the circular economy.
Yeah, congrats, by the way, on the Eigenlayer piece. That's huge. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to put all my thoughts together here, but there's like a couple buckets. So at Core right now, we've been live about 18 months or so. A lot of it's just like building blocks DeFi, particularly focused on Bitcoin use cases. So it's like your lend borrows, it's minting stable coins, it's Bitcoin-backed perp dexes, kind of these building blocks that we've seen in EVM ecosystems where you've got obviously a lot of this capital that's been historically locked up. Only a percentage or so has come on chain. We talked about this on our panel a couple days ago, but it's still pretty substantial, and we think there's going to be more and more liquidity that flows, and there's just obvious use cases of people that want to do things with their Bitcoin and not have to do it through BlackRock ETFs. They want to do it on chain. The other bucket that we're seeing is yield. Yield is going to potentially bring more Bitcoin on chain. I think historically there hasn't been great opportunities. Again, we talked about that. And the way we're seeing it is there's like risk-free yield. So for example, with Core, you can stake Bitcoin, and there's a few other solutions coming out where you do it on the L1 and it actually helps secure the blockchain. 6,000 Bitcoin staked today, risk-free rate yield, you're actually putting your Bitcoin to work. And then from there, you can have a bunch of other trust assumptions and probably higher yields that'll kind of bring you on chain or participate in DeFi. So there's a lot of those opportunities now. I'm very surprised by how many people with large amounts of Bitcoin, and even small amounts, or even staking, or trying to find yield on chain. It seems like there's a lot of pent-up demand and latent demand of trying to put your Bitcoin to work and earn something on it, as opposed to it just historically sitting. So yeah, a lot of the use cases revolve around that. Could be LSTs, LRTs, built on our secure yield, for example, and your typical DeFi building blocks. So super excited about that because there's $1.5 trillion sitting there, dwarfs Ethereum, and it's historically been kind of locked on the Bitcoin chain.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback off of what you both said, because a lot of the Ethereum applications that you're mentioning, like perps and lending and borrowing, and especially also prediction markets, since Bitcoin is so popular with really anywhere that does predictions in general, I think that's going to be huge with poly market types. But the other side of it is that I've seen some really cool builders that are applying to the GOAT Founders Club with like these hybrid ideas of like Rune Oracle. Rune Ordinal / EVM type applications, which is pretty cool and interesting. I've also seen, actually seeing what Mezzo was doing before. I thought that was pretty great that we can finally start introducing some KYC. I think some of the interesting thing that we should start looking that EVM would actually be specialized in as an L2 would be zero knowledge DID, or these systems that Polygon introduced for ZK DID. I think that would be really great. And also, there's other prover networks outside of the one that we're using, like which is ZK MIPS and ZKM. Like Alio just launched mainnet, and I know that they there's builders here that are actually looking deeper into how they can start doing these sorts of like prover zero knowledge based like privacy applications that are utilizing Bitcoin for various purposes. So yeah, I think the realm of inventions are interesting, and the EVMs, of course, are the pretty obvious ones. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head beyond that so far, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like for us, like BTC Fi is definitely big, considering all the partnerships like with Babylon itself, Lorenzo, Lombard, you kind of name it. They definitely need the DA layer itself, what we just talked about. But in addition to that, one of our primary focus is being a little bit shifted towards more consumer applications, like 1 billion plus users on Telegram, super easy to reach. And that's what makes it interesting, where the Ton ecosystem is pretty much growing on a daily basis. So there's so many applications coming in, mainly GameFi, but also DeFi, Polygon, Polychain market, all pretty much like makes it a way where easy to onboard those people that are interacting with Telegram, interacting with Web2, pretty much applications on a daily basis, while staying secured by Bitcoin. So I feel like at the end of the day, how we can get to the next million users, that's, I feel like, the easiest way to get to. There's already a massive user base to it there. Even if we can reach that 1%, we can pretty much able to interoperably bridge those. Let that be another L2, let that be another, let's say, like DeFi game, really, will make it much, much easier for us to see some volume growth in the ecosystem.
Jeff, you want
Yeah. I think, if we ask any user, like, why do they use your product? I think the main reason is like they want to make some money, right? And when you're talking about a chain, they will ask like, what can I buy from your chain? Like, why can I make money like on your chain? So I think that day one, our strategy is, to have, like, for example, audience sets are like the biggest BRC20 tokens. We have more audience sets than any other exchange in the world, just after Binance. So we have more audience sets than Bybit, than OKX, than whoever that is. And also with Ruins, we are like number 2 biggest holder for DOG as well. So we're trying to get all the users, to have the assets on our chain. And also, so then the users will know, if I want to do something on your chain, it's because there's something there I want to buy with better liquidity. So we keep doing that for half a year. It's really, really tired. Last night, we are working with, like, in my house, we're sitting with like 7 different builders for Ruins and Ordinals. And we were there just being silent for like 30 minutes. Because right now, it's really bad for the BRC20 and Ruins. So, but still, like, we need to find a way to bring like the innovations to these Bitcoin native assets. And when you have this liquidity, the users have to go to your platform. Like, in February, in March, we have so many users to bridge money from BNB Chain, from Solana, from Arbitrum to Merlin to buy stuff, because we have something they want and they cannot buy them from anybody else. And also the second thing I would say, just bring great builders. Like Soft Bitcoin was like growing on Merlin, and now we're working with, like, Soft is working with Mazo, is working with Core, right? So yeah, so like, just with great builders, with Avalon, with Surf, like, we have all these great builders. They build on Merlin, they build on like your ecosystems, and then they expand to multi-chains, and we help them. Like some people will say, oh, you should stay on Merlin only, right? You should not help any other chain, like no B-layer, no Mazo, no, we don't do that, right? We help them grow, and also we help them to expand to multi-chains, to help the whole ecosystem to grow. So I think like that's something I would say, to get massive adoption, to get credits and trust from the users.
Yeah, I think the whole Bitcoin scaling, all of you, we all kind of share the same ethos, right? It doesn't matter, like, at the end of the day, right? So whatever users want, that's what ultimately matters. Like, all this technology that's been built outside, I think we are all like trying to see, like, what best and what works. I think Bitcoin doesn't have a foundation. Like, I think we are all like on the face of the Bitcoin scaling ecosystem. So any closing thoughts, guys? Ash, you wanna? Yeah.
I have one opposing thought. There's always that the elephant in the room where it's like, of course there's some healthy competition.
Yeah,
it's just like we don't know how to point it out right now. But I guess the elephant in the room is there just needs to be more researchers that are actually debunking the styles and the architectures that are supposed to and also not supposed to work. I think maybe there are a lot of teams that are getting fooled into actually producing an L2 that's actually not going to scale, and it's not going to actually be trustless. It's not going to be able to scale, decentralize itself, or even be sustainable. So I think it's very hard to see now, and of course, it's a bad idea to actually discourage the researchers who are actually trying to make sure that we can come up with these answers in the next 9 months. So instead of eliminating the opportunity, I would say it would be better to maybe encourage the opportunity, since we can actually see opportunities to merge and hybridize these sorts of applications. Bitcoin L1 and then pure Bitcoin L1 are, I think they almost fall into the same ballpark. Generally speaking, when I went to the Bitcoin Nashville conference, there was one sweaty that came up to me and he was like, "How dare you build an L2?" But we talked through it, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know that about Ethereum. Oh, I didn't really get that Ethereum is actually that secure. I don't really understand Kickhack. I was like, you just don't understand cryptography, actually. So the thing is that I guess the skepticism just comes from the lack of education. Education would be a huge bonus for a lot of us. I don't really see, I had the White Paper Summit leads that were talking to us yesterday at the Restaking Summit yesterday. They were explaining how realistically, I don't know where to go to actually learn how to Bitcoin script. I don't really understand how to write opcat and all these things. I was like, well, I don't really think you need to. I think the infrastructural builders are actually going to design this for you. And the point of L2 is to kind of make that ease of use of developing. That is the point. These are platforms and open source platforms, mind you. So I would even say that's like what Meta and what Zuckerberg is trying to kind of like put out to the world. It's like if you're going to open source AI, you got to go all in. You can't just like close source it and look what happens with open AI. Realistically, let's make as many agents that are open source, just like however many L2s that are open source with various different flavors, Claude and so on. There's going to be L2s in the same realm.
That was beautiful. I think the only thing I'd add to it, I think the elephant in the room, healthy competition. I think we need to have rapid evolution right now. We shouldn't be shunning, call it divergent thoughts, but like, let's take it, let's account for it, let's rapidly evolve. Also, the space is so small, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I think if you put all the L2s, everyone building on Bitcoin together, maybe under 15 billion, maybe a little less. Yeah. I don't know where the market is. And from that perspective, rapidly trying to figure out how we solve things, actually building consumer applications, because the point is we're all building infra right now, but we need someone to build on top that actually touches the customer, where it's like, hey, and make it so hard for them not to use it. It's like it's make a product so good that when they're looking at it, they're like, why the crap am I not using it? And I think AI had that click when ChatGPT came out last year. It was like, I want to use this. Right? There was like an immediate click of this is going to make my life easier. You tell someone to use crypto today, they're like, give me a 10-hour course, and then where does it actually impact my life? The average person, we're all somewhat privileged, I would say, because we're in countries that probably are pretty stable. But like for other parts of the world, it's not there yet. And so we have to start thinking about them and connecting with where they are, and building I think rather than like debating each other, like just build the best things and the survival of the fittest at the end.
Yeah, I feel like each one of us here and also like so many other builders are convinced in their idea that we will get there. So I'm not worried about when we will get there, but each one of us are working in a way of how we can get there. So I feel like at the end of the day, the end result we're all looking for is going to be the same. And just really excited when we'll actually get there. Because again, it's not really about the result really, but it will definitely take some collective effort. So I feel like actually supporting each other, and again, the space itself is pretty small where everyone is convinced in their ideas, but not really criticizing and looking at it from a positive feedback of things, so we can actually build in the innovation and actually make it there.
Next year will be big. It'll be Bitcoin scaling year.
Yeah, I think my last word will be build something really cool. We stick to this idea from last year, and right now, like recently, we were investing over 15 plus Telegram dApps that are helping to bring volume and users to Bitcoin ecosystems. So just try to build something cool, support the little guys, the independent devs, and build something special. I think users will eventually love it, and just don't build similar things, compete with TVL, with number, with VCs. Build something people actually want. I think Bitcoin is the first thing in crypto that people actually can understand and want this. It's pretty cool. And right now we have too many things are so similar to each other, scams, and that's why people starting to lose interest in crypto this year for the retail users, for the everyday people.
Yeah, I think the competitive TVL is happening a lot outside.
We didn't start this.
Yeah,
we didn't start this. Yeah.
Brandon?
I don't have a ton to add. I think we're just really excited. I mean, taking stock back at 2049 last year, Core, we were talking to a lot of people that are like, what? Bitcoin scaling is kind of a pretty foreign concept. So just to see where we are a year later is pretty exciting. I agree that there's a lot of noise as well, but the reason is just such a big opportunity. Just so much liquidity sitting
Yes, I
there.
agree. Yeah.
A lot of excitement, big opportunity. That's why people try and fight to win that space, and a few winners will emerge.
Yeah.
And I agree with the survival of the fittest. A few
Yeah.
winners are going to emerge, and we're coalescing on this really big opportunity. There's also a really big opportunity for trustless bridges and a variety of other things, and those are incentives for people to solve really big problems. So I'm really excited and bullish. That's why I'm personally dedicated to this space, and I see a massive opportunity. So super excited to see where we are next year.
Yeah. I'll open up any questions, guys, from the audience. Please.
So, in general, I think the consensus you're talking about is like the ability is important that people can make money by building networks, or another thing is like so that it should be easier for developers or researchers to pick up the topic. Do you have any suggestion to developers or researchers who are starting on Bitcoin ecosystem? What is the open passion you want them to contribute? Is there anything you would recommend with this one if you want to build something or if you want to research something? Like, you would recommend and you want to talk to them?
Like I would say, sorry, I'm a Web2 guy. So always focus on what users' activities are. You know, if you look at on-chain addresses, are they doing BTC-Fi? Are they doing lending? Are they doing trading? What types of tokens are they trading? What types of protocols are they interacting? You know, find the trend, find what users are trying to do. Like when we are doing BTC-Fi, we see different trends. We see people using different, you know, like protocol to stake in different network. And when you see that, I mean, first you see alpha, you know what token will be pumped. Second, you know, you can see like what is missing in that, you know, chain. Like, you know, they're doing this. Like what are the users like needs in that like system and that are missing, and you can find the opportunity to build something cool.
That's kind of also I want to add is that's like how can I get a job question. It's like it's almost so similar because like there's like research and then there's development and then there's product market and then there's everything else that goes above and beyond. So if you're going to fall into one or two fields, definitely as like a product and application developer, you're going to want to kind of wait and stick with one of the L2s or at least all of the L2s, since primarily, depending on your build, you can effectively apply it to multiple ecosystems, as we see with multi-chain application builders that do this already. So I would say like you can keep that, but as far as the research is concerned, it depends on what you're kind of researching. If you're kind of trying to improve and optimize, let's say like signature timing and how we as L2 builders make commitments to Bitcoin, I think that actually is like a really fascinating field of research. There's different approaches with what kind of signature schemes we even use. Some are faster, some are slower. There's even debates on like what kind of zero knowledge virtual machines that we end up using so that we can actually create faster prover time and also lower the computational cost, because if we decentralize a zero knowledge virtual machine, and you might know some of them, like there's SP1 and the ones that that we're mentioning before with ZKM and Risk Zero, Jolt, and so on, and Alio, of course. Like there are going to be various kinds of trade-offs with what kinds of builds that the builder they are going to interpret and hey, this is how I'm going to make a commitment to Bitcoin, and that's going to vary. So researchers should really kind of scope out and battle each other on like, you know, like that, and we're going to kind of sit back and implement the ones that's actually going to work. So that's the cool decentralized governance factor that I think Bitcoin's going to kind of have, creating this idea of foundations working together. Since, you know, you're right, there's no such thing as governance really on Bitcoin. There are founders who apply and update Bitcoin, and you know they did this with Taproot, and even Lightning Network is kind of considered L2 already. So I mean, it's not like it's a foreign thing. So we're gonna keep seeing, yeah, and then that's like the playing ground you kind of get to play in.
Not much that was the question. What to build? What you should build?
I mean,
Passion to developers or
where do they start?
because you were all talking about like innovation is happening.
Yeah.
What should they be doing?
Building dApps. Yeah, I mean, I have like a really boring opinion on this probably, where it's like, I mean, you gotta go talk to some people. Like talk to Bitcoin holders or wherever you're located, maybe in your geo, and like you gotta ultimately find a problem and solve it. I think we've talked a lot about infra here, but there's an obvious, we were driven there because there's an obvious problem with scaling Bitcoin. There's more demand to do things with Bitcoin and limited amount of block space, and there's also issues with miner sustainability. There's a million things there, right? So, yeah, I also think like as a founder, you got to be super passionate about something. If it's just an idea, you may stick with it a couple months, a year or two, but like to me, that's not enough time, truthfully. Like true products don't get built in a couple months, even though I think in this industry that seems to be an expectation sometimes. So, yeah, my honest thoughts are like typically you do it by researching, by talking to people or seeing some trends or solving a real problem, defining that, and then if you're really fired up about it, you go after it. And I think there's a lot of opportunities now with a lot of these products being launched to go build things with Bitcoin, financial products of some kind, maybe consumer apps that we could talk about after if you want. But that's my boring answer.
Cool. I think we are out of time. Thanks for the panel.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Was it